I'll be really quick because we want to learn from Lisa about Figma, and this is an event to enjoy, to learn, and to do like networking. So please, if you have questions, you can ask after the talk, and feel free to ask. Oh. And enjoy, and thank you so much for coming. We are from Friends of Figma and also from PrestigeUX, and we are super happy that you came here to share your learnings with us. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I better check first. I'm actually on the video before we start. Yeah, okay. Okay, so hi everyone, nice to meet you all. So I'll just introduce myself first before we get started. Obviously I'm going to be talking to you today about user testing and how you can user test your Figma prototypes. So I've tried to keep it quite basic for you, I don't want to overcomplicate it. I have been in research a long time, so it can be easy for me to do that. So I'm going to try and keep it as practical for you as I can, so that after this you can actually go out and do a user test yourself. So I've been a UX researcher for about 20 years now. So before the term UX even existed, and you can probably tell from my accent I'm from the UK. So I live between the UK and Lisbon at the moment. So you'll probably see me at some of these events again in the future. And I've worked with loads of different brands in my time. These are just some of the more well-known ones that you'll have heard of. So I started my journey in UX working for Sony Ericsson. I don't know if you remember the touchscreen mobile phones that they used to have. So I used to work as a usability specialist for Sony Ericsson. I used to go and walk around looking over people's shoulders while they use mobile phones, because we didn't have any of the fancy technology and software that we have now. So it was really hard to do user testing back then. It's way easier now. There's so many tools that can help you, so you're very lucky. And then after Sony Ericsson, I worked agency side, so that's how come I've worked with so many brands over the years. So I've been quite fortunate in having that experience. So yeah, I'm going to share that experience with you today. The first thing that I guess we need to cover is, what is user testing? You probably know this already, but just in case you're a bit unsure, basically it's where we give a representative user a digital user interface, and we get them interacting with it. We analyse their behaviour, we ask them questions, we give them tasks to do. We get all that feedback, and then we improve the UI to make it more successful. So here you can see a gentleman on the right hand side. I love this picture because it's very contextual, and it shows the benefit of face-to-face research as opposed to remote research. So you can see that he's actually not using his finger, he's using a pen with what they call the capacitive thing on the end, so that you can actually press the buttons with the pen. And you know, then we could ask him questions about why he does that, and you know, it's difficult because of his dexterity. And you can also see that he's put a sticker on the side of his phone. I've blurred that out deliberately. I think that had his phone number on, but all these little contextual things are also really insightful as a researcher. So yeah, I really like that picture for that. And of course, there are loads of benefits to user testing. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in a job in UX, would we really? So it means that you can test your designs really quickly. You can get the feedback really quickly. You can see if they're resonating with users, if they're finding them easy to use or not. And then you can change those there on the spot, rather than having to wait till launch and then perhaps having to rework things and it taking more time and more money. It gives you evidence for your stakeholders as well. So it means that it makes your job easier as a designer, because you can go, hey, I user tested this and the evidence shows that people really struggled with this and we need to change it. So rather than it being just your opinion, it's the opinion of users and what you've seen as evidence in their behavior. So it makes your job easier in that respect. So it helps with that buy-in, and then at the end of the day, obviously, your design is more successful. So whether that's an app or a website, or I've even worked on factory machinery interfaces, all sorts. As long as it's a digital interaction and an interface, the user testing will help to improve that experience and to make it more successful. Okay, so step one, what you need to do is choose which method you're going to use for your user testing. So there are loads of different methods in UX research. You could do discovery research where there's no UI involved at all. You could do eye tracking where you put a pair of glasses on somebody, you can see exactly where they're looking on the screen. There are all kinds of techniques out there. But really, for what you need for testing your prototype, you just need a very typical user test that's quite task-based. And there are two real options for this, so either remote or face-to-face. And there's nothing wrong with remote, especially since COVID. A lot of people are used to remote techniques now. It's more accepted within businesses, so it's easy to get buy-in. I think years ago, stakeholders preferred face-to-face because they just liked being in an observation room and knowing that there's a user on the other side. They just enjoyed the experience of the day. But nowadays, I think most of my research is remote. As I said before, there are some benefits to face-to-face. So if you do feel like that context is more important, or if you're a researcher like I am, then you probably like to analyse the body language, the tone of voice, pick up on micro-expressions, then you probably prefer face-to-face. But yeah, for you guys, I would say remote is probably a bit easier for you to do. And then you need to think about how you're actually going to get people to take part in your research. So how are you going to go about this user recruitment? And these are the main ways that you could find people. So there's what's called guerrilla testing, and that's where you can literally just go outside to a coffee shop and approach people and see if they want to test your prototype. So obviously it takes a certain type of person to have the confidence to go and do that. The coffee shop sometimes don't like it, so you need to get permission from them first. You don't know who you're approaching, so it might be somebody who doesn't really fit your target audience. So there's no way to sort of screen them and filter the people before they take part. So it can be quick and easy, but it can also be difficult and awkward and get you into trouble. The other thing you could do is use your existing contact lists. So you could, for example, go to your marketing department and see if they've got a list of customers already that you could tap into. And then you could email them and see if anybody wants to take part in research. Obviously, this then biases the people to being customers, and they probably like your brand a bit more than other people. So even if they're not customers and they're just signed up to your newsletter, they've still expressed some interest in your brand. So there will be probably a bit of positive bias to the answers that they would give you in the research. So that's just one thing to be mindful of. But that's obviously a really easy way to tap into people. Then you could also use a recruitment agency. So this is the most objective method. So they will go out and they will recruit people for you, and you can give them a brief, you can give them a screener so that they can identify who matches your customer segment. And they can recruit customers and non-customers. They can recruit anyone basically. So they've got the means to do that, and they've got large panels across the world already. The only thing is that you obviously have to pay for that. So that's probably the most expensive option. And then finally, you could take on targeted marketing yourself. So you could create some adverts, you could put them online, you could put posters up around buildings. Then you would need to screen and filter those participants yourself. So that can be quite time consuming for people to do and might be quite difficult for some people as well. So there you've got several options that you can choose from. And I'm going to assume that you're going to do this yourself, and that you, as part of that process, you're going to create a screener for your recruitment. So basically, a screener is a set of questions that are in a survey format. So you can use a survey tool like Typeform or SurveyMonkey. I use SmartMoz for mine because it's got a bit more skip logic in it. And basically what this does is people fill in the questions and then you filter them by the questions, and then the people that match the demographics or the behaviours that you need to get through the survey, they leave their details, and then you can contact them and book them in for a session. But if you're using a recruitment agency, you wouldn't have to go through this process because you could just give them a set of requirements and then they would create the screener for you. So this is only applicable if you're not going through the recruitment agency option. Okay, so the general process in how you would screen users is after you've created your screener, you would send it to potential users. So let's say that you use your customer list and you send it to your customers. Then you would go through the responses, analyse them, and you would see who best meets your criteria and create a short list of people from that who you might want to include in your research. Then what you really want to do is do a further screen. So that at that point you then want to call people just to check that they can verbalise their thought process, that they're not going to struggle within an interview format, that they're comfortable being recorded, and just do a quick sort of run through to see if they feel like the right person to take part. So some people just freeze a little bit when they're being interviewed, or they're just not very good at expressing themselves and their opinions, and they just don't make great research participants. So it's always good to have that call just to check. Then if you're happy with them, book an appointment, an email confirmation so don't forget, and they will forget. So what you need to do is like the day before, just send them a text message or another email or give them a call just to make sure that they don't forget. Especially nowadays, I find that years ago it was way easier. People didn't forget, but now they really do. You have to send them several reminders just to get them to turn up. Okay, so now that we've recruited people, oh, I should say as well that I've put that as the first step because that takes a bit of time to do. So what you can do is sort of kick off your user recruitment, and then while you're waiting for people to fill that in and to come through, you can be doing all the other steps in this process. So the next thing we're going to do is write our test script, also called the discussion guide. And what we're going to look at now is how you would structure that discussion guide. And this is just an example that could work for you testing your Figma prototype. So this is an example setup that I think would work well for you guys. So the first thing you need to do is have a good introduction to the research. So I actually read this out to people before I even press the record button, because I don't want to be recording them on camera and sharing that video with stakeholders before I've got their full consent. So I just like to go through this before I start recording them. So what we want to do here is explain the purpose of the test, set expectations around the fact that it's a prototype, because we know that with a prototype they might click on something and nothing happens, which will be weird to people. They're not used to that, so we just need to explain that that's what could happen, just so that they don't panic and they don't feel bad or they don't feel stupid when that happens during the session. We need to remind them to think aloud and maybe even give them an example if they've never done that before, just so that they know what thinking aloud is like. And remind them to be honest with their answers. So I always say to people, I don't work for the company, I'm totally independent. You can say what you want to me, both positive and negative, I don't care. Reassure them that what they say to you is confidential and that their responses are going to be anonymised when you feed back the report. Remind them that the session is being recorded, so hopefully in the recruitment process the recruiter would have explained that it would be recorded, so they've set those expectations anyway, but it's good just to get that final confirmation. Let them know that their recording will be deleted once the research is completed, or if it's not, advise them how long it will be maintained on your systems, just with regards to GDPR and how you're going to handle the data. And then remind them that their participation is voluntary and that they can stop at any time as well. I also never use the word test. I always use the word research, because as you say test to people, it puts pressure on them and they think that they're being tested. And even if you say you're not being tested, it's the website that we're testing, they still hear the word test in their head and they will interpret it as a test and they'll get stressed. So just use the word research. And then I ask them if they have any questions, and then finally, are you happy to proceed? And then once they said yes to that, that's when I hit the record button and we start the session. Okay, so once we've got the introduction out of the way, I always think it's really nice just to begin with some warm-up and background questions. So rather than just diving straight into the prototype, just warm them up a bit, get them relaxed into the session, get a bit of rapport going on between you and them. And yeah, you do get people who are nervous, so this just helps with that as well, just to relax them. And this is also a great opportunity to learn more about them as people and to inform your personas as well. So, you know, your persona should always be a live document that you're constantly updating based on your research findings. So I love to use this part of the research to find out more about them, find out about how they purchase things at the moment, if they have a routine at all, what those routines are, what their preferences are, what influences their buying process, and anything else basically that I want to ask that's not prototype specific. So yeah, and this works really well. And then another thing I like to do is to pause when they get to the prototype. So what I'll often do is give people the link to the prototype. They'll click into it. Often the prototype will start on a landing page, or it will start on the home page anyway, so it's something that you would want the first impressions of. And yeah, I'd ask them what their first impressions are of that page before they actually interact with anything. Because in real life, people make really quick judgments based on how something looks. So I want to know, as soon as they land on this page, is it something that would entice them to scroll down or to click on anything? Or would they be more likely to hit the back button and go back? And why is that? Why would they want to hit the back button? What is it that this page isn't doing that's making them feel like they don't want to continue? So I ask all those kinds of questions when they first hit the prototype, just to check those first impressions. And then we get into the task phase. So this is really where they start interacting with the prototype, and we can see how well the prototype performs. So this is where we give them several tasks to do. And obviously we want to make sure that these tasks are really well aligned with the discussion guide, or the discussion guide is really well aligned with the tasks, with the prototype. So it's really good to just run through the prototype and make sure that everything that the user would do to complete this task is possible on the prototype, that there's no functionality missing, and that all the text is correct and everything like that. So another thing to bear in mind here is the way that you word the tasks. So you can see on the right hand side, we've got a task to find and add a combo meal for Papa John's pizzas. And that's a task, you know, find and add a combo meal. We could give that to somebody and give that as a task for them to do. Now, the problem with wording it in that way is that it becomes very much just a point and click exercise as to whether they can do that. So what you'll find is users just click through very functionally and do the task. But they're not really thinking about it properly. They're not really thinking about their needs and what they would do in real life. You're missing all the context. Also, you might be leading them with the word combo meal, whereas actually in real life, they might not think of what they're ordering as a combo meal. You might find that they don't even know what that means. So there's a lot of assumptions as well in that. So what we're better off doing is rewording that task to be a scenario. So something like, a friend has told you that Papa John's have a deal on a large pizza where you can get drinks and a side cheaper. Can you find out more about this deal and then show me how you would add this deal to your basket? So there we've got a good scenario for them. We've not told them the answer that they're looking for a combo meal. And you'll find that they start to think of it as a bit more realistic, and they'll tell you more things as they go through the task. Okay, and then after they finished each task, you could ask them some questions. You know, how did you find the task? Did you have any difficulties? What would make it easier for you to buy these products? You could even get them to rate the task afterwards as well. from a score of say 1 to 5, where 1 is very difficult, 5 is very easy. So after each task, you could do some quantitative measures as well if you wanted to. So then let's imagine that you've done several tasks and you've come to the end of the session. We don't want to just end the session there. We want to see about their concluding opinions, what those are, whether they've changed from maybe the start and the first impressions. So what you can find is, let's say someone has a negative first impression, and then they go through the tasks, and then they get to the end, and sometimes their mind has changed. Suddenly they've become more positive. So it's really good to sort of do that comparison and see what changed their mind, at which point did their perception start to change, and which points in the UI or which elements that they interacted with or which content did they read influenced that change of mind. So at the end, we want to be asking them just general feedback as to what their thoughts were on the website or the app that they used. What did they like the most? What did they not like? Is there anything that they struggled with? Is there anything that they would change or improve? And also, it's always a good idea to see if they have any other feedback at all. So sometimes you can go through this whole thing and they've had something in their mind that they want to get off their chest about the brand. And so sometimes you'll find that they've been holding something in the whole time, and that just gives them the opportunity to raise that with you. And sometimes it's nothing to do with what you're testing, it's just an experience that they had that's, I don't know, maybe in the store or something, but they just want to get it off their chest. And it's good to let them do that, just so that they feel like they've completed the session. Okay, and this is something that I would advise you to do, because it's the biggest problem for me is the technology. So I can rely on myself as a researcher to do the research to a certain standard, but I can't rely on the technology. So what I'd say is test the prototype, test it again and test it again. And there's always a surprise, because people have different devices, and then you find that the designers have tested it on their iPhones, and then you've got people using Android devices and it doesn't load properly. So just make sure that you've tested it fully. Test your testing software as well. So whatever the software you're using, whether that's Zoom or Google Meets, just make sure that you've tested that fully as well. People quite often struggle to screen share on mobile. That's the main problem that I find with people. So I always give myself 5 minutes extra just to go through that with them. And again, that depends what phone they've got. So even different Android devices seem to have the screen share settings in Zoom in different places. So it's really difficult. Make sure that your computer has completed any updates. So this has happened to me before on Windows computers. I don't use Windows computers anymore, thank God. But you could guarantee that if it was going to do a software update, it would do it in the middle of a user research session or in between, and it would take forever to do it. And you just get that blue screen of death. So yeah, I don't risk that anymore. Make sure that you've got enough storage space. So when you're recording videos, they really do take up a lot of space on your computer. So I've had this before as well, where I've had to, in between users, just empty some of the videos off onto a hard drive just to make some extra space. Again, Windows computers. And then make sure that your computer has enough power to run all of these software at the same time. So quite often, you know, when you've got your Figma prototype, let's imagine it's face-to-face, so the user's using your computer, you've got your Figma prototype running, you've got your Zoom running, maybe you've got another piece of software running as well at the same time, and before you know it, your computer's just going really, really slow, and it's never been slow before, but until you've like done the real test, it's difficult to test it. So yeah, just make sure that everything's working properly. Okay, so now that we've done all that, we're ready to conduct the interviews. And what I'd say is that if it's your first time doing user testing, don't worry about following your discussion guide question by question. So quite often when you watch researchers, they will know the discussion guide off by heart, and they'll be able to jump around questions and ask questions off the cuff. And they won't necessarily need to follow everything that's on there. But if it's your first time, don't worry about that. Just stick to the script, because it's better to ask a question properly than to try and make something up on the spot that's perhaps biased or leading, and getting an answer that's not right. So yeah, for your first few times, don't worry about that. Just follow the test script. Try and keep a good flow and make it conversational. So again, this helps with people's nerves. If it feels a bit more informal to them and a bit more conversational, make sure that you smile, make sure that you're not like sat there yourself feeling really nervous. Or if you are really nervous, just try and hide it. And just try and make it feel a bit more like a friendly conversation than a test or an interview. Again, I don't like to use the word interview with people really. It's just a research session. We're just getting your feedback for our website. It's just a research session. Yeah, don't be too formal. Keep your atmosphere relaxed. And yeah, the more you do, the better you'll be. So some of the more common tools for remote testing at the moment are the ones at the bottom there. So we've got Google Meet, Zoom, and Microsoft Teams. Out of those, I prefer Zoom personally, but you know, it's whatever you prefer. They're all fine. I've got all of them on my computer. Okay, top tip for prototypes is feel free to change them between users. So actually it's a good idea, rather than booking users back to back on the same day, to book say 2 back to back, then give yourself an hour or 2 gap. And then if you find that the first 2 users are having the same issues, then, and it seems really obvious to you, you think, oh my God, why didn't I think of that before? You know, that's really obvious. We should change that. Change it, and then see your next 2 users, and then change it again, and then see the next 2, and you'll get so much better value out of that than just seeing 6 users back to back. Yeah, so that's always worked really well when I've tested prototypes in Figma. So quite often, if it's like a face-to-face session as well, we'll have the designers in the observation room, then I'm in the research room, and they're sort of tinkering away with a prototype, even as I'm doing the research, so that when the next person comes in, and we reload the prototype, I think I'm going mad because it's changed, and then I realise I'm not going mad, it's because they've changed it in the observation room. So yeah, it's really good. It means that you don't have to do as many user tests as well. You can just do 1 user test rather than doing multiple user tests, so it just saves time and money and everything. Okay, so we've done our interviews, and now it's time to collect the data and to analyse it. So I'm going to suggest three methods for you that you probably like the best. So we've all got pen and paper. That's probably the easiest one that you could do. Post-its, so you would write each insight on a Post-it note and then stick that up on the board. Or you could use an Excel spreadsheet, or something like a Google Sheet, so that you could then share that with your colleagues, and they could maybe be typing up the insights as well at the same time. Now, what I think is the most fun out of these is this one. And it's more collaborative as well. So if you do have observers in the meeting room, then they can, you know, write on the Post-its, they can stick them on the board, they can stick them on the UI, whatever works best for them. And I think this is just an easy way to collect insights as well for you, even if you've not got a team of people collecting insights. Even if it's just you, this is a really easy way to do it. So what you need to do is, first of all, you create a set of categories that reflect the areas that you're testing in your prototype. So you can see we've got a login, we've got account overview, we've got payments, contact us, and then we've got a general section for other stuff that comes up. And then we've got a persona section. So this is, if you remember when we were looking at the discussion guide, the first section of the background/introduction questions, they would feed into the persona. So that's how you would set up your template. So you can imagine that we've got this whiteboard here. We could just section it out into those 6 segments. And then for each insight that somebody comes up with, you would take a Post-it note, you would write down that insight. It could be a quote, it could be something that they said, it could be something that they did, it could just be something that you thought of as they were doing something. You would note that down and you would label it with the category. So LI would be login. And then each person would have a different coloured Post-it as well. So that means that you can easily see when you look at the board how many people had comments in that section. Okay, and then obviously we then put each Post-it into the relevant category, and you can see there just how many people had feedback on each of those. And then you would also want to group similar insights. So this then shows you just how frequently that issue or that comment came up within the research. It can also give you an idea of the severity as well. Okay, and then the final thing after you've done all that is to write up your findings. Now, this is something, I don't know, if you're just doing really quick user testing, you might not need to write up a report. You might just need a one-page summary just to feed back to the team. But if you do want to write a report, these are the kind of things that you would put into that. So you start off with a general overview of the research objectives and the method that you used, and a summary of the findings. So you don't want to put your summary at the end of the document. You want to put it at the start, just so that if someone's not got time to read the whole thing, they can read the summary of the findings right at the beginning. You want to put an overview of the participants that you used, so the number of participants, their persona types, why they were chosen. Then you would go into your detailed findings, and then what I tend to do is put either a finding per screen or a UI page per page, a UI screen per page. And then people like visuals, so it's always really good to annotate the UI with the user findings. So what you want to do is give a description of the finding, a indication of the severity, a quote to back that up, and a recommendation. So quotes are really useful. It just stops stakeholders arguing with the finding, because otherwise if there's no quote, they don't seem to believe it for some reason. So whereas if you put a quote in there, it makes all the difference. And then at the end of the report, you want to put next steps. So just to advise people what you recommend to do after the research. Okay, and I have got a video. Unfortunately, if you're watching this online, the audio doesn't work, but I know that Bruno is going to add it to the video afterwards, so you will be able to hear the audio if you watch the replay.
Yeah, I think that's all okay. So we've got 3 years of addresses there, haven't we? So shall I press next now?
Yeah, you can do, yeah.
Yeah. So employment status, employed, where do you work? So it wants the company name and the address, which I would expect. How long have you worked there? And your annual income. Okay.
How do you feel about giving that information? Would you know all that information, and would you feel comfortable giving it?
Yeah, I'd know all that information, and you have to give it if you're wanting to have credit. They're going to have to do have all your information about where you live, what you earn, obviously all your details really. So I expect it really.
What do you think they do with this information?
They'll speak to a credit reference agency, somebody like Experian, or is there somebody else? There's a few of them actually. I don't know who they would use, but they'll use this information to get a picture of you, and your financial information to see if you are good for taking credit out, if you have the ability to pay. It'll be based on your personal information that you've given.
So do you think there's any contact with the employer, or do you think it's literally just, you know, the Experian, the credit reference agency that
Yeah,
keeps
I
in
can't,
touch?
no, I can't see there being any contact with the employer, because this is pretty much, once you've filled all your information in, it's a pretty much instant thing. It might take a couple of minutes, but it should give you, you know, like good to go straight away if you've been approved, or they might want more information, you know.
Okay. All right, so yeah, thank you for that feedback. If you tap on the screen, that will take you to the next step.
Has it frozen?
No, no, if you tap that, it's just because it's a
right,
prototype.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, don't worry.
Right, so this is the ID thing. Okay, so let's just passport. Please upload one of the following documents. Right, so this is pretty standard. I think for the one I did, it was passport, driving license, or a utility bill up to 3 months. So so can I just click next now with that? Is that,
yeah, that's
okay.
Fine. And then we're going to take a photo for this one.
Do you know what? This is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. And the reason why I say that, because I can compare it to what I went through with the last one. I had to actually input the information, and I don't actually, I think I used my driving license. It might have been my passport. It was a nightmare.
Oh, really? So you had to enter all of it by hand?
Yeah. So like I think on a passport, it's got loads of chevrons at the bottom. It's like the
no.
So I mean, you get one chevron less. You can imagine it's so the fact that you're taking a photo, that's brilliant. There's no like sort of human error there really, unless you're taking a really rubbish photograph. Yeah. So should I just click next?
Yeah. Yeah. Take a photo and then next.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wessex would like to access your camera. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. There you go. There's the chevrons I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So
I think my eyes would go blurry trying to count how many there are as well.
Yeah. Can you imagine though? You can easily get that wrong, you know.
Easily, yeah.
Okay, so clicking photo now. Yeah.
Yeah, if you take that photo.
Yeah, and then done. Checking your identity. Your identity has been verified. Next. Yeah.
Okay, so that gives you an example of what it's like to use a tester, a prototype, and the kind of questions you can ask and the flow. Actually, it's really interesting because it was years ago when I did that research, and other people, she was quite clued on, but I remember the other people, they didn't know why they were asking for the employment details. And they had all kinds of thoughts around, you know, are they going to turn up at my employer's address if I don't make the payments? That would be really embarrassing in front of my colleagues. And this was a real block actually for a lot of people. They didn't want to put their employer's information in there. So that was like a major issue with regards to this UI. And actually they don't turn up to your employers, you know, but it's just about reassuring people that that's not going to happen. So we just needed to add some text in there to provide that reassurance about why they're asking that question, why they need those details and what they're going to do with it. So yeah, I should have chosen a different person actually, but okay. Have we got time for questions, do you think? Feel free to connect with me, by the way. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, so I'll just leave that up there for you.
We have one from the chat. It's from Maria Sidorova. She says, hey, thanks a million. This is extremely helpful. Maybe I missed the part, but what are your favorite tools for moderating testing? Mm-hmm.
So I like to use Zoom. So if you look at this slide here, these are some of the tools that you can use that are really popular nowadays. So you can use Google Meet, you can use Zoom, you can use Microsoft Teams. And the real benefit really after COVID is that people know how to use these things now. So before COVID, it was much harder to do remote testing. It was always really fiddly to get people to download the app, then to log in. You'd be waiting 5 or 10 minutes for them, thinking, why are they late? And it's because they're just struggling to do all the tech stuff. Whereas when COVID happened, everyone suddenly had Zoom, they knew how to use it. They had Teams, they had Google Meets. So it made remote testing so much easier. Like everyone has these things now on their computers and on their phones. So life is easier nowadays than before COVID. That's one of the benefits of COVID.
I think the question said unmoderated. So these are just moderated user testing, and she said unmoderated.
Oh, for unmoderated. Yeah, I don't really do that so much. What tools have I used before for unmoderated? I can't remember the name of the last one that I used. It had a panel as well, so you could. I can't remember the name of it. It was an agency that I was working with, and they had a contract with this company, and it was quite a new remote unmoderated platform. But they're generally all the same. They generally have a process where the videos are recorded. You then can play them back. You can flag highlights in the video so that you can get back to the interesting points really quickly. They generally have a panel of users that you can promote it to as well. Those panels are always poor. Like, I hate using the panels. And actually we had, you could just tell when you watch the videos back, people were talking about, I don't know, the navigation or the visual feedback or the such and such icon. You know, I don't know, they were just talking in a way that normal people don't talk. And I was like, where are they getting these people from? How many times are they reusing them across research? Like, I just don't really like it. But yeah, their panels are always a bit iffy like that. But yeah, sorry, I can't think. But as I said, they're generally all the same, all the ones that are out there. But I don't have, because I'm more agency based, I have to use the tools that my clients use for unmoderated testing. So, but yeah, they're all generally the same.
Questions? We have another one. And the question is from Lisa. And she asks, when you don't have a budget because you're not employed, what is the best way to get users to test your prototype? Only family and friends will help you, or is there any tool that you use that can help with this?
Yeah, if you've got no budget, it's hard. But this is where you could try the guerrilla testing approach. So you could just, if you've got the confidence to, then just go on the street, stop people, ask if they'd be willing to spend 5 minutes. And you will have to problem something, but a lot of people will do it just for a coffee, especially if they're already going into the coffee shop. If you say, you know, I'll buy you a coffee, if you can test out this website for me for 5 to 10 minutes, and you will get some people that will do it. Yeah, or you could just like go to a library or something like that. I don't know, like a public space where you're going to find people. So, because yeah, if you were doing like a 45-minute interview with somebody or 30-minute interview, then you would need to pay them as well. So it can be quite costly. You've got to incentivize them. But yeah, that's the cheapest way if you've got no budget, or if you've got no budget, change job to a company that does have budget, because they probably respect UX a bit better.
I have a question about this. Like in your testing, you go by yourself, you go with another person just for them to take notes?
Yeah, it's not something I've done very often. But I think if I did it, I don't know, would I go by myself? Yeah, I probably would, to be honest. I think if you're by yourself, if it's one person, it's a bit less intimidating. If you've got 2 people approaching you and they've got, yeah, I think it's maybe you've got less chance of it being successful, whereas if it's just one-on-one, then it might be a bit more successful. Yeah, you could even have, so I've heard of people doing this with like a little poster as well, or they'll be sat in a coffee shop and they'll have something, yeah, like a little stand or something on the desk, so that they've almost got the next person queuing up to take part just to get their free coffee. So yeah, it can work really well. Yeah.
I think that would work.
Yeah.
So we have another question here from Inês Gonçalves. Hi, thank you so much, Lisa. I learned a lot. I have a question. How do you define the categories in the analysis phase? How do you define?
Oh yeah, so the categories in this process, they're just defined from what you're testing within the prototype. So if we imagine that the prototype we've developed, we've designed the login page, we've designed an account overview page, we've designed payments page, we've designed the contact us page. So you're basically replicating the pages or the areas that you're questioning within the category. So these can be what you need them to be. It's basically what you're testing. And if you find that there's another category that comes up, just create a different category. Just move. If you've got Post-its, that's the benefit of them, is that if you do find that there's an extra category that you've missed, you can just write it on your whiteboard and start sticking the Post-its in there as well. So just adapt it to what you need it to be. These aren't sort of set in stone rules at all. It's all what works best for you. So sometimes, I don't do the Post-its. It is quite nice, especially as a group exercise. But sometimes I just like to get all the data in a big spreadsheet and start bolding out words and highlighting things, dragging things around, and that's just what I like to do. But I think the Post-it note is the most popular way to do things. It's the thing that most people prefer. So that's why I would recommend that. Okay.
So you said that it is best and also use user testing to say something like research. Right? Maybe can you recall from your experience some of the bad practices or bad stuff, like what's not to say and what not to do?
Just in general with research, bad practices, things not to do. So definitely the wording of the questions. I think that's a common one. So for example, you need to make sure that the way that you word the question is equally weighted. So you wouldn't say to somebody, well, I do this actually, but if you said, did you like that then? They're more likely to say yes because you've positively biased that question. Whereas what you would say is, how much did you like or dislike that thing that you've just looked at? So it's just more equally weighted and more balanced. So that can be one of the things, if you're not as used to doing research, you might be more likely to say something like that and get a bit excited about the prototype and the fact they seem to be liking it. And you might go, yeah, oh, so did you like that then? And, you need to sort of remain a bit more neutral. How much did you like or dislike that? And you can use that scale to help as well. So using scale can help you just to understand the strength of feeling. So if you said, how much did you like or dislike that on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is you really disliked it and 5 is you really liked it, and they say a 3, then it gives you a chance to then ask them further questions and find out why they scored it a 3. Or if they said a 4 rather than a 5, you could even say something like, oh, okay, so what would make it a 5 then for you? And you can sort of use that as a way to engage in a more conversation around that specific thing that you're talking about. So I think that's really important. Yeah, I'd say that's an easy one to do as well. It's an easy one. It took me years to sort of catch myself and stop asking, because it's just in general conversation we ask things in a biased way all the time. So it does take a lot of practice to get yourself out of that habit. Okay, any more questions?
Any more questions? No. So now would be the time to get connected with each other. Enjoy, like you can talk with Jason too. And I will ask you, could you share the slides?
Oh yeah,
is
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe later we can share a link of this. Or maybe with the email of everybody. I think everybody is signed in the mail. So we can share with you too. No worries. Okay, that's good.
Do you need me to stop the sharing?
Bruno will stop from there. So yeah, let's do the thing. Okay.
There you go, you can come back.
Hey, thanks so much, everyone
Bye.
that are online with us, and see you next.
Next
Okay.
week. Yeah. Next event. Hi.
Bye bye.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. It was awesome, and we will continue here connecting with Joe. Okay.